You're the person everyone calls when they have a problem. You're the rock, the stable one, the one who has it all together. People admire how independent you are, how you never seem to need anything from anyone. But here's what they don't see. You're exhausted, you're lonely, and every relationship you try to build hits the same wall. People get close, but not too close. They care about you, but they don't really know you. And eventually they drift away or tell you they can't connect with you, and you have no idea why. Because from your perspective, you're doing everything right. You're not needy, you're not clingy, you don't create drama, you handle your own problems. You're the definition of low maintenance. So why does it feel like nobody can reach you? Why does every relationship stay at surface level no matter how long you're together? And why do you feel so alone even when you're surrounded by people who care about you? Hey everyone, it's your Auntie Unfiltered. Today we're talking about something I see all the time but nobody wants to address. The emotionally stable people who have optimized themselves right out of human connection. If you're new here and you're ready for some uncomfortable truths about relationships and psychology, I'd love for you to consider subscribing. We're building a community of people who aren't afraid to look at the hard stuff. So let's talk about the vulnerability paradox. And it goes like this. The behaviors you think make you attractive and independent are actually the same behaviors that prevent intimacy from forming. You think you're being strong by never asking for help, but refusing help makes people feel useless around you. You think you're being considerate by not sharing your struggles, but hiding your struggles makes people feel like they don't matter to you. You think you're being mature by always saying, "I'm fine," when you're not. But every time you say, "I'm fine," you're building a brick in the wall between you and genuine connection. And here's the part that's going to sting. The people who seem the most put together, the most emotionally stable, the most independent are often the loneliest because they've optimized themselves for self-sufficiency to the point where nobody can get close enough to actually know them. You're not letting people in, and then you're wondering why nobody feels connected to you. Now, before we go further, I want to be clear about something. There's a huge difference between healthy boundaries and emotional walls. Boundaries are about protecting your energy and your peace. They're about saying no to things that don't serve you. That's healthy, that's necessary. But walls are different. Walls aren't about protection, they're about prevention. You're not protecting yourself from bad people or toxic situations. You're preventing anyone, even good people, from getting close enough to hurt you. And in the process, you're also preventing them from loving you, knowing you, or connecting with you in any meaningful way. So how did you get here? How did you become someone who can't let people in even when you want to? For most people, emotional walls start forming in childhood, and they form as a survival mechanism, not a character flaw. Maybe you grew up in an environment where showing vulnerability was punished, where crying meant you were weak, where asking for help meant you were a burden, where emotional needs were dismissed or mocked. So you learned early that the safest thing to do was handle everything yourself. Never need anything, never show when you're hurting, present a perfect, capable exterior at all times. Or maybe you experienced betrayal or abandonment when you were vulnerable. You opened up to someone and they used it against you, or they left, or they couldn't handle it. So your brain learned that vulnerability equals danger, and it built walls to make sure you'd never be that exposed again. Or maybe you were parentified as a child. You became the caretaker, the therapist, the rock for your parents or siblings, and there was no space for your own needs or emotions. So you learned that your role in relationships is to give support, not receive it, to be strong for others, not to ask for strength in return. Whatever the origin, the pattern became hardwired. Vulnerability feels dangerous. Needing people feels weak. Asking for help feels like failure. And the only way to feel safe is to need nothing and no one. But here's the problem. That survival mechanism that protected you as a child is destroying your relationships as an adult, because intimacy requires vulnerability. Real connection requires letting people see you when you're struggling, when you're scared, when you don't have it all figured out. And if you can't do that, if you can't ever take off the armor, people can't actually connect with you. They're connecting with the persona you present, not the real you underneath. Let me tell you about Sarah. She came to me frustrated because every relationship she'd been in ended the same way. The guy would tell her he felt like he didn't really know her, that she was closed off, that there was this wall he couldn't get past. And she was confused because from her perspective, she was being a great partner. She never complained, never asked for too much, never burdened him with her problems. She was independent and strong and stable. But that was exactly the problem. He never saw her vulnerable, never saw her struggle, never got to be there for her in a meaningful way. And that made him feel like she didn't need him, like he was optional, like their relationship was shallow. And eventually he left, not because she was too needy, but because she wasn't needy enough. Because humans need to feel needed. We need to feel like we matter to the people we care about. And when someone won't let us in, won't let us help, won't let us see them as fully human with needs and struggles, it feels like rejection. Now, I can already hear some of you thinking, but I shouldn't have to be vulnerable to be loved. People should accept me as I am. And you're right. You shouldn't have to perform or pretend. But here's the thing. Being vulnerable isn't performance. The performance is the constant strength, the endless I'm fine, the armor you wear every day. Vulnerability is actually the opposite of performance. It's taking off the mask and letting someone see the real you. And yes, that's scary. Yes, that's uncomfortable, but it's also the only path to real intimacy. Let me explain the neuroscience behind this, because it's fascinating. When you're vulnerable with someone, when you share something real and they respond with empathy and support, your brain releases oxytocin. That's the bonding hormone. It's the same hormone that bonds mothers to babies, that creates attachment between romantic partners. Oxytocin creates feelings of trust, connection, and safety. It literally rewires your brain to feel more bonded to that person. And here's the key part. Both people get the oxytocin hit, the person being vulnerable and the person offering support. Both brains are creating a stronger bond. But when you refuse to be vulnerable, when you never share anything real, that bonding process can't happen. Your brain never gets the signal that this person is safe, that they're trustworthy, that you can depend on them. And their brain never gets the signal that you need them, that they matter to you, that they play an important role in your life. So the relationship stays shallow, surface level, pleasant maybe, functional, sure, but not deep, not intimate, not the kind of connection that actually satisfies the human need for belonging. And right there is why you keep feeling lonely even in relationships, because you're in relationships with people, but you're not actually letting them know you, the real you, the messy, struggling, imperfect human you. If you're realizing right now that this is exactly what you've been doing and it's making you uncomfortable, good. Let me know with a quick like. It tells YouTube this content is hitting home for people, and it helps me know I'm talking about the right things. Now, I want to talk about how this shows up differently for men and women, because the cultural conditioning around vulnerability is completely different depending on your gender. For men, emotional walls often get praised. Society tells men strength means never showing weakness, never crying, never admitting fear or uncertainty, handling everything alone, being the rock, the provider, the protector. And God forbid you ever ask for emotional support. That's what women do, right? Real men don't have feelings. Real men don't need anyone. So they build these walls and they get rewarded for it. They get told they're strong, capable, admirable, until they're in a relationship and their partner is begging them to open up, to share what they're feeling, to let her in, and he has no idea how to do that because he spent his entire life learning that feelings are weakness and weakness is unacceptable. So he stays behind the wall and she feels shut out, and eventually the relationship dies from emotional starvation. Even though he loves her and she loves him, they just can't bridge the gap between his conditioning and her need for emotional intimacy. Now, for women, it's different, but equally damaging. Women are allowed to have feelings, but only certain kinds. You can be nurturing, empathetic, supportive. You can care for others, but needing care yourself, being genuinely struggling and needing help, that's being a burden. That's being too much. That's being needy. So women build walls too, but theirs look different. They become the caretakers, the therapists, the ones everyone leans on, and they never let anyone see that they're drowning underneath. They never ask for help because they've learned that asking for help means you're failing at being the strong woman who can handle everything. And both patterns, male and female, lead to the same place:
loneliness, isolation, relationships that look good from the outside but feel empty on the inside. Now, let's talk about the difference between this kind of emotional unavailability and avoidant attachment, because they're related but not identical. Avoidant attachment is a specific pattern that forms in childhood when caregivers are consistently emotionally unavailable or dismissive. Children with avoidant attachment learn that their emotional needs won't be met, so they stop expressing them. They become self-sufficient because dependency leads to disappointment. As adults, avoidantly attached people typically don't want deep intimacy. It doesn't feel safe or comfortable to them. They prefer relationships that stay at a comfortable distance. They pull away when things get too close. They might sabotage relationships that are getting too intimate because intimacy feels threatening. But you can have emotional walls without having avoidant attachment. You might genuinely want connection. You might crave intimacy. You might feel lonely and long for someone to really know you. But you still can't let people in because the walls are so deeply built that even when you want to lower them, you don't know how. The difference is desire versus ability.
Avoidant people often don't want deep intimacy. People with emotional walls want it desperately, but don't know how to create it. So if you're sitting here realizing that you've built walls and you genuinely want to take them down, what do you actually do? How do you start letting people in when you've spent years or decades keeping them out? First, you have to understand that this is going to feel uncomfortable, deeply uncomfortable, because your nervous system has been trained to associate vulnerability with danger. So when you start being vulnerable, your body is going to freak out. Your heart will race. You'll want to deflect, minimize, change the subject. That's normal. That's your nervous system doing what it's been trained to do. The key is to notice that response and do the vulnerable thing anyway. Feel the discomfort and speak the truth anyway. Notice the urge to say, "I'm fine," and say what you're actually feeling instead. Start small. You don't have to trauma dump on the first date. You don't have to share your deepest fears with someone you just met, but you can start practicing small moments of honesty. When someone asks how you are and you're not fine, try saying, "Actually, I'm having a rough day," and then stop. Don't minimize it. Don't immediately deflect to talking about them. Just let that truth sit there. When someone offers help, try saying yes, even if you don't technically need the help. Even if you could handle it yourself, say yes and let them do something for you. Notice how uncomfortable that feels. Sit with that discomfort. When you're struggling with something, try telling someone about it, not after you've solved it, not once it's over and you can present it as a success story. While you're in the middle of it, when you don't have the answer yet, share that you're struggling. And here's the really important part. Pay attention to how people respond, because your walls were built based on past experiences where vulnerability led to pain. But you're not in those situations anymore. You're choosing who to be vulnerable with now. When you're vulnerable and someone responds with empathy, support, and kindness, let that sink in. Let your nervous system register that this person is safe, that vulnerability with this person doesn't lead to punishment or abandonment. It leads to connection. If you're vulnerable and someone dismisses you, mocks you, or uses it against you, that's information too. That person isn't safe, and you can choose to not be vulnerable with them again. That's the difference between walls and boundaries. A boundary says, "I won't be vulnerable with people who hurt me." A wall says, "I won't be vulnerable with anyone ever." You also need to challenge the stories you tell yourself about what vulnerability means. If you believe that needing help makes you weak, question that. Is it actually true, or is it a story you learned a long time ago? If you believe that sharing your struggles makes you a burden, ask yourself if you think that about other people. When a friend shares that they're having a hard time, do you think they're a burden? Or do you feel closer to them, more trusted by them, more needed? Chances are you don't judge others the way you judge yourself. You extend compassion to them that you deny yourself. So start extending that same compassion inward. Let me share something personal here. I used to be exactly this person, the rock, the one who had it all together, the one who never needed anything from anyone, and I was proud of it. I thought it made me strong, special, better than people who were needy. but I was also profoundly lonely. I had friends, sure, I had romantic partners, but none of them really knew me because I never let them see me struggling. I performed strength so convincingly that people actually believed I never had hard days, never felt insecure, never needed support. And then I had a breakdown, a real, messy, can't hold it together anymore breakdown, and I had no choice but to let people see me falling apart. And you know what happened? The people who really cared about me showed up. They didn't judge me, they didn't think less of me. They felt honored that I finally trusted them enough to be real, and our relationships got deeper, stronger, more meaningful. I learned that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's actually the bravest thing you can do because it requires trusting someone with the real you, not just the polished version. And I learned that the walls I'd built to protect myself were actually the thing keeping me trapped, isolated, alone. So I started practicing vulnerability. Awkwardly at first, I'd overshare and then immediately regret it, or I'd share something real and then try to take it back. But slowly, it got easier. My nervous system started learning that vulnerability with safe people leads to connection, not danger. And my relationships transformed, not just romantic ones, all of them, because people finally felt like they could get close to me, like I was a real person, not a perfect robot. Sharing that wasn't easy, but I know so many of you have been there or are there right now. If my story made you feel a little less alone, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe. We're in this together, figuring out how to be human in a world that tells us we have to be perfect. Now, let's talk about the risk, because there is genuine risk in being vulnerable. Not everyone is safe. Not everyone will handle your vulnerability with care. Some people will use it against you. Some people will be uncomfortable with it and pull away. That's the reality. But here's what I've learned. The risk of staying behind walls is greater than the risk of being vulnerable with the right people. Because the walls might keep you safe from hurt, but they also keep you safe from love, from connection, from intimacy, from being truly known. And living a life where you're never truly known by anyone, where you're always performing strength, where you never get to rest and be held and be vulnerable, that's not safety, that's a prison. You're trading the possibility of deep connection for the guarantee of shallow relationships. You're trading the risk of being hurt for the certainty of being lonely. And maybe for a while that trade made sense, maybe it was the only way to survive, but you're not in survival mode anymore. You get to choose now. You can choose to let people in, to risk being seen, to trust that the right people will handle your vulnerability with the care it deserves, and to build the kind of relationships that actually fill you up instead of leaving you feeling empty. It won't be comfortable, it won't be easy, your nervous system will fight you every step of the way, but it will be worth it. Because the alternative is spending the rest of your life wondering why nobody can reach you, why every relationship stays surface level, why you feel so alone even when you're surrounded by people. The alternative is being the emotionally stable person that everyone admires but nobody really knows, the rock that everyone leans on but never gets to rest, the wall that people bounce off of instead of connecting with. And you deserve better than that. You deserve to be known. You deserve to be loved for who you actually are, not the persona you present. You deserve relationships where you can take off the armor and just be human. So start small. Practice tiny moments of vulnerability. Notice when you say, "I'm fine," and consider telling the truth instead. Notice when you refuse help and consider accepting it. Notice when you hide your struggles and consider sharing them. Find safe people, people who have earned the right to see you vulnerable, people who respond with compassion instead of judgment, and practice letting them in. It's going to be uncomfortable. Your brain is going to scream at you that this is dangerous. Do it anyway, because on the other side of that discomfort is the kind of connection you've been craving your whole life. Stop being so healthy that nobody can reach you. Stop optimizing yourself out of human connection. Stop building walls and calling it strength.
Real strength is being vulnerable enough to let people see you. Real courage is asking for help when you need it. Real connection requires taking off the armor and trusting someone with the real you. If this video hit home for you, do two things for me. First, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Maybe that friend who never asks for help. Maybe that family member who always has it together but seems lonely. Someone in your life is living behind walls and doesn't know how to take them down. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I do videos like this every week, breaking down the psychology of relationships, attachment, vulnerability, and what it actually takes to build real connections. We're building a community of people who are willing to do the uncomfortable work of being real. Because at the end of the day, you can have perfect walls or you can have real relationships, but you can't have both. The walls that protect you from pain also prevent you from love, and love requires risk. It requires vulnerability. It requires letting people see you as you actually are, not as you wish you were. Maybe that's the real secret to connection, not being perfect, but being real, not having it all together, but being willing to fall apart in front of safe people, not being the rock, but being human. You've been the wall for long enough. It's time to let someone in. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.